Hi, this is Dominic Keating. I played Lieutenant Malcolm Reed on Enterprise, as you probably know, and you are listening to the NX 7062 podcast. Enjoy.
Well, hello, War Dog. Thank you for joining me. That was really scary. My whole computer, for some reason, just went. I have no idea what happened, but I am here. I also have a special guest waiting to join us. So really quick, let's get to the usual updates, and then we can move on. How does that sound out there in YouTube land? Okay, so Lower Decks. All I have to say is how perfect that this past week's episode was talking about the temporal Cold War and those damned Corinthian bats that you have to swing brooms at just to get them under control, considering who I've got coming on next. It was a great episode, but those two Enterprise references, loved it. Loved that they're trying to catch up with the Enterprise references, considering they spent the last couple of seasons not doing as many Enterprise references as they should have been doing, in my humble opinion. I know a lot of you know that I was in California this past weekend at the Hollywood show, and I have Klingon news and other news and things to talk to y'all about. It's all going to wait till next week. And the only other news that I want to tell you guys tonight is, if you are not, hurry up and start following all the Voyager documentary social media, because I ran into somebody who is in the know over this past weekend, and I can tell you that the Voyager documentary is going to have some major announcements coming up as far as whatever they're going to come up with, because I was told I'm only allowed to tell you that much. So now, without any further ado, because I know you're all not here to see me, you're here to see my very special guest. So everybody, let's welcome John Billingsley. Hello!
Hey, how the hell are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for putting down your phone before we got started.
Absolutely. Actually, I was not looking at my phone. I was looking at this book about the making of Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh, such a great movie.
Doesn't hold up, in my opinion.
But Moon River is a great song.
Moon River is a great song. Loved the cat. There were certainly some charming moments. God knows Audrey Hepburn was an extraordinary performer. The interesting thing about the book is that George Peppard was apparently quite the asshole.
Oh,
so
wow.
Huge George Peppard fans out there. Apparently he took himself really seriously, almost had a fist fight with Blake Edwards, and Patricia O'Neill hated his guts because he tried to cut all her lines.
Oh my God.
There, right off the bat, we're getting some good inside Hollywood skinny about Breakfast at Tiffany's.
See, I knew there was a reason I wanted you on, because I wanted to talk about classic Hollywood movies.
There you go.
I mean, might as well call the show TCM. We'll just do some TCM stuff tonight.
There you go. And that was one that I had never actually watched. So it was on the other night. I thought, I gotta watch this.
Yeah, you can't not. I honestly,
the book.
Yeah, exactly. Well, did you read the book before you watched? So you read the book before you watched the movie?
I had the book about the making of the movie.
Right.
I read Breakfast at Tiffany's years and years
ago. Okay.
I don't remember it terribly well.
Okay.
I would have read it when I was a teenager, probably.
Okay, I just asked you a question.
The concept of call girl at that age,
Right. Well,
something the movie itself does not really really grapple with. It's like, what does she do exactly?
Very true. But I realized I asked you a question. So that challenge, you still have yet to get on a podcast and make sure that the podcaster doesn't ask you a question, because I remember we talked about that.
Yes, that has been a challenge of mine. It's happened upon occasion, yes, where I can get on a podcast and I never actually allow the podcaster to ask a question. I just start talking, and the next thing you know, an hour's gone by. You ask as many questions as you want, darling. Fire away.
There we go. And in case you all are unfamiliar with John Billingsley, if you've ever met
shirt for you, for God's sake. How's that?
Look, that's about the only thing that's going to be clean about tonight is your shirt.
I know. I have a reputation apparently as being a gutter child. I'm not.
Well, that probably comes from the fact that you offer to let people ask you any question they want to try and embarrass you. Nobody's embarrassed you yet.
That's true.
Yeah, I think
I am fairly unembarrassable, but the reason I do that, for those of you who are listening at various conventions, when you have a 45-minute dog and pony show, there's a good likelihood that you'll be asked things about, the dilithium crystals and the yada, yada, yada. I know nothing about any of that. So I just try and steer people into asking me questions about my personal life in hopes that in their attempts to embarrass me, I can actually embarrass them, which I am able to do very successfully 90% of the time.
Well,
we give people a prize for the person.
Yes, you do.
This is important. For the person who asks the most embarrassing questions, I give them a bag of my toenail clippings and some toiletries that I steal from the maid's cart.
I remember that from the first time I saw you. And just so you know, War Dog thinks you're looking very dapper.
Oh, thank you very much. I know. How about this? I'm kind of looking at myself thinking, you know, I kind of.
And John Billingsley is awesome at conventions. So says Mohammed.
Oh, Mohammed, you're so sweet.
Isn't that sweet? Hey, listen, I will tell. I got in trouble the first time that I saw you, I think at a convention, or first time I saw you at a convention where I worked. I was working in New Jersey, the last official Star Trek creation event in New Jersey. I think it was back in 2017.
In Parsippany?
Yes.
Yes.
In Parsippany.
Yes.
And I was working the microphone for people coming up to question you.
Yes.
And I started laughing, and I got in trouble for laughing at your jokes because I'm not allowed to laugh. I'm just supposed to stand there and hold the mic.
Really? Oh, if I'd known, I could have made 5 minutes out of that.
Yeah, I know.
I had no idea. Life is so odd and interesting and tangential. You know, getting Star Trek led me to discover that I have the spirit of a low vaudevillian. When they put a mic in your hand, they give you 45 minutes. That's not something that ever would have happened to me outside of the Star Trek world. But in Star Trek, they did it. And then they said, you know, do whatever the hell you want. It was like, really? So I could bring a seltzer bottle on? A cream pie? My wife? Fall down pants? The whole 9 yards? Okay.
And the proverbial cat was out of the bag.
The cat was out of the bag. Absolutely. I like to think that the byplay is highfalutin and erudite. It's the physical comedy is lowbrow. You know, so there's this sort of disparity between, you know, the devil and the angel in a way.
There you go.
That's what I like to think.
Well, hello, Travis. Oh, so glad you could join us.
Hello, Anthony.
I have some very, very loyal followers, and they are all here, plus some new people, because, you know, you bring in the crowds, John.
Mars. Hi, Mars. I know all of these people.
Because you're a superlative individual, and I am so glad that you are all joining us here tonight. I do want to kick it off with one of my own questions.
I'm going to be hard-pressed to come up with anything that everybody hasn't heard a bajillion times. I may just throw out all my old stories and replace them with utter bullshit. Yeah.
See, look,
how was I cast on Enterprise? Well, it's a funny story. I was doing a Jimmy Stewart impersonation, and somebody said, "Well, wouldn't it be great if Dr. Phlox was like Jimmy Stewart?" And that's how. And then they decided they didn't like that.
I have to ask you about your feet on Enterprise. Those toenails, and was that something that you slipped over your foot?
Each individual toenail was glued on in a painstaking hour-and-a-half-long application, and I had to walk on my heels so I didn't break them on the floor. Every time you turned around, you discovered that Dr. Phlox could do different things. He had a big puffer face. He could blow up like a puffer fish. He had a ridge spine. He could climb a building like a... I mean, I was a fucking superhero. You think that they would have done more of that shit.
They waited till the 4th season to surprise us all with that puffer fish.
The puffer fish, but the tongue that, you know...
that's right, the tongue.
The tongue.
All right. My favorites, and I know you've told this story so many times, but it still has to be my favorite story. Because we talked about the episode where you were minding the shop because...
Yes.
And I came up to you at one point at one of the Vegas conventions, and I said, I have to tell you, the movie that Phlox was watching, The Jester in King Arthur's Court, the Danny Kaye movie.
Oh, yes.
Very sentimental to me. My grandmother introduced me to Danny Kaye. That whole, the flagon with the dragon, the blue, I knew that scene. So
he was also watching For Whom the Bell Tolls, if you recall. And maybe that was a different episode. But that
might have been,
There's a scene in which I'm sort of remarking on the fact that humans cry. Because is weeping at the end of For Whom the Bell Tolls. Which is really, if you've ever watched For Whom the Bell Tolls, it's like, oh my God, this is the longest motherfucking movie. Whoa!
But I'm telling it's just so funny because
it's like, get out of it!
I'm telling you this emotional story about how seeing that movie that meant so much to me, and an episode of Enterprise was just amazing to me because I loved both. And you proceed to tell me your big idea for the naked Dr. Phlox scene.
Oh, yes, that sounds like me. Yes. Yes. Well, actually, yes, this was because, on our show, everybody was always running around in their underwear except me. I mean, you couldn't turn around and there would be Connor Tenier running around in blue underpants. So I was making fun of the writers at a party, I think in season 2, and saying something to the effect of, when do I get to run around in my underpants? And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Chris Black said, oh, yeah, well, maybe we'll have you without any underpants at all. And I said, you bring that on. I know this is a network show. You're not going to get away with that, but you do what you want to do. And let's see what I have to say about it. And sure enough, there it is. Season 3. They had me walking around naked, which was fabulous. My proposal was that I walk into sick bay, the door's open, I turn sharply to the left, and all the way across the room, a flower pot hits the ground. And
that would have been great.
That would have been great. They vetoed that, as they vetoed every idea I had, unlike Bob Picardo, who couldn't spit without them making a fucking trope of it. It's like, oh, what if I sing opera? You sing opera. What if I go out with 7 of 9? You go out with 7 of 9. I couldn't come up with one goddamn thing that they liked.
He got to be inside 7 of 9. I mean, he didn't just date her.
I didn't know that. Heavens.
Yeah, there was an episode where somehow because she was part computer and he was a hologram, he actually was able to be inhabit her body. Oh, yeah, got to eat cheesecake. He got to eat for the first time.
I almost had Palm Far with T'Pol.
Yeah, and they took that away from you because you were.
I know. It's like, come on, Dr. Phlox would have done it. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, I don't know. I can't. Heavens no. It's like, come on. I grant you, they would not have had much of an episode.
Cock blocked by the writers. That sucks.
3 minutes of episode. Okay, let's do it.
I just want to shout out to Kelly. It is 3 a.m. where she is, and she is awake just to see you.
Kelly, you're so sweet. You're probably going to nod off, and if so, that's fine because this will still be here in the morning because you taped this, right? You can watch it.
Yes, it is live now, but it stays on Facebook and it stays on YouTube. So,
Kelly, feel free. Say goodnight, Harper. Your eyes are getting heavy. Fall asleep, Kelly Harper. Get up, Kelly. Wake up.
All right, Faith is explaining the Voyager episode. He had to hide from these people who really didn't like holograms inside her cybernetic implants.
Oh,
and
wow.
And a side effect of that was he was experiencing what she was experiencing, including eating. So there was this whole cheesecake scene.
Oh, you meant literally cheesecake. I thought
literal like dessert, like fork and little cheesecake.
All right. They wouldn't let me eat cheesecake if I said, "How about I eat some cheesecake?" They'd go, "No, key lime pie for you." They were just. Nothing that I came up with they liked, including my idea, which I have also pitched before because this is my favorite idea, is that we pick up a Denobulan ship in distress and we find out that it's full of, bedraggled, hungry Denobulans. They bring us all on board and all they want to do is fuck and eat and make a mess. The whole ship is covered with used underwear and dirty dishes. It's like they bring on like a ship full of Oscar Madisons and they all look like me. All Denobulans look like me, and that's the episode.
That would have been that would have been a better series finale than the series finale.
Like The Trouble with Tribbles, only we're Denobulans.
There you go. Like I said, better series finale. So I spent the weekend with JG Hertzler. I was actually out in LA. I was at the Hollywood show with JG, and
I'm biting my tongue.
Well, we always talk about what is it? Anything Goes Fridays was something that you guys did on Enterprise.
It was?
And
I never worked on a Friday. I don't know. I don't remember Anything Goes Friday. What happened when Anything Goes Friday?
Was it Friday? Well, you guys got to say or do whatever, and then somebody told JG about it, and he took it too far because he said something inappropriate to one of the producers or somebody on set, and thus ended Anything Goes Friday.
News to me.
Really?
I have to understand. I was number 7 on the call sheet. I had a little song, which again is something that a lot of people.
Yes, I was going to ask you to do the song. Could you do the song?
Yes, this came about because as the doctor who was not frequently on the bridge, sometimes entire episodes go by, you barely see me. So I used to sing this song as I was leaving the soundstage, primarily to irritate Dominic, and it was day off, 6 days off and the check still come. Character actor in the sun. 6 days off and the check still come. I particularly like to sing that song when he was in one of the spacesuits. That was
oh yeah.
Sometimes I'd show up on the set when I knew he was going to be in the spacesuit just to kind of like eat popcorn and watch. It's like, hey Dominic, one more take.
Did you ever?
They were miserable. But Dominic was particularly irritated by them. And for some reason, I think because, to know Dominic is to kind of want to torture him. I think the producers thought, let's put Dominic in the spacesuit again.
For an entire episode while he's pinned to the hull of the Enterprise.
Yeah, that was possibly his lowest moment when it came to happiness on the show. I don't remember Anything Goes Friday, though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe because you were only there for a couple hours earlier in the week.
Everything went by the time I arrived. I don't know. Yeah.
Or maybe they just didn't tell you because they were afraid of what you would do.
They were afraid of what I might do. That's possible. Although I was generally pretty well behaved. One thing I always, and this is in all seriousness, I have a tremendous amount of respect for how hard the crew works. There's always a really fine line on any television show between having a sense of humor and having a sense of playfulness and acting up to the point where you slow down the work and you slow down camera. And as much as people want to have a good time, it's like these guys are putting in long hours. So I'm happy to fuck around, but I also am kind of a stickler for making sure that we don't slow the day down. So my jokes were frequently pulled off to the side when it was possible to, like the Halloween party. I did win first prize on Halloween, coming as Phlox in bondage.
Oh, where are the pictures of that?
They're in a special desk drawer. I'm not entirely sure that that's something that Paramount would probably want to see the light of day. But there are pictures, and the focus puller was the dominatrix, and I was the submissive on a leash, but I was in my full Phlox regalia.
I love it.
The story is that she was supposed to pull this off with another camera guy, and he chickened out. So she shows up, and she's dressed like a dominatrix. It's Halloween. It's our, there's a costume party every year. And she didn't have her partner. So I said, well, hey, I'm in my Phlox makeup. Let's see if the costume department can get me something. So they get me the whole 9 yards. They get me the red rubber ball and the black bustier. And it's like the whole thing. I attach myself to her leash. She brings me on stage. She whips me. I sit in the captain's chair. And I like milked it for all it was worth. And
of course you did. All right.
I came home that night. I said, Bonnie, I won first prize. It's like that old Scottish joke. I don't know where I've been, but I won first prize.
Yeah, I know that joke. I'm sorry, Mark, but did you really think we were going to stay out of the gutter for any longer?
Oh, Mars, I know Mars. Mars lives in the gutter. Come on, Mars. Don't pretend that you don't love it.
All right, so let's see. War Dog agrees with you. Dominic must suffer. I'm kind of on that boat with you. And Happy Valley, PA represent. This is actually a friend of mine named Roy, who I actually met at that convention, that Star Trek convention in New Jersey, because he was dressed as in cosplay. And I kept calling him Enterprise for the entire weekend until I finally found out what his name was. And it turns out not only does he live in Happy Valley, where I used to live, but we also have mutual friends. So see, Star Trek really does bring people together.
It does indeed. It does indeed.
Yeah, let's see. What does Mars have to say? I was born in the gutter and I shall die in the gutter.
I know.
At least you have a plan. Jean from Canada chiming in. Phlox is my favorite. Why would you have any other?
I've also told many times the Bob Picardo story. That Bob Picardo sent me an email one day. He said, "Hi, John. Just want to let you know a recent fan poll voted me the most popular doctor, and you the least popular doctor. Hope you're well. Bye, Bob." Fairly certain that was a push poll, Bob, conducted only within your actual family. But a measure of my affection for Bob is that he's still one of my dearest friends, even though he takes no end of delight in reminding me that I was on the show that killed the franchise.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's why it's back and stronger than ever.
It really lay dormant for a while. It
did lay dormant. But, the resurgence in Enterprise actually came out, a lot of it came out from COVID and people just having nothing else to do.
No, it has been, and all kidding aside, it has been very gratifying to know the show has been kind of rediscovered and that people have come to it with a different a different sense of expectation. I mean, honestly, at the time, and I say this all the time, we were not. There was no break between Voyager and us. Rick and Brandon, I think, were running on fumes. They cast it well. I think they had some good ideas. If they'd been given a year off, and I think if the audience had had a chance to just kind of mellow for a little bit, I think we would have been more successful. And also being on UPN, which was, itself a dying network.
Yeah, that's what killed the franchise. It wasn't anything else besides just the perfect shitstorm.
Yeah, I mean, it is undeniably true that our premiere show, I think we attracted 10 or 11 million, and then the next episode was 2 million. So people did kind of vote with their feet. But in retrospect, you go back and I think, there's a lot that worked about the show and a lot to recommend it. So I'm glad that people are discovering it again. I'm sorry we didn't get to see a season 5 because I think they had some interesting ideas. I don't think anybody really thought that was likely to happen, but having heard years later what some of the thoughts were, it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah. The show. I mean, the show and the cast. You all deserve more than you got.
Certainly more. I don't know that other people deserved more. They had plenty. I deserved probably some more. Old Fat Phlox. That's my pitch. That would be the show that I would come back. Old Fat Phlox. Every episode opens with Old Fat Phlox just rocking in a chair. Well, that reminds me of a time back when I was, and then in flashback, all the young naked actors run around and they act the story out, and then comes back to me at the end. Stay tuned next week for another episode of Old Fat Phlox.
Robert
one on the call sheet, but I still don't have to come to work more than half a day.
And you'll still get those paychecks come.
And nobody has picked that idea up. I don't understand that.
I don't know why. Robert wants
about Dr. Phlox appearing in any upcoming Star Trek series. Weren't you just listening to what I was saying? What's an upcoming Star Trek series? Old Fat Phlox. Old Fat Phlox.
We'll start the petition tonight. And we'll make it happen.
Yeah. I'd love the idea that Paramount starts getting like, what about Old Fat Phlox? Is there any truth to the idea that Old Fat Phlox is who has to open those envelopes?
That would more than likely keep you from ever getting any guest appearances. But I mean, denobulins.
It's not like they're knocking at my door,
Well, yeah, but denobulins can live to be 200 or so. I mean, everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what I hear every now and again, I don't really keep my ear to the wall about anything.
Right.
But every now and again, I hear some rumor that there might be on one of the animated shows a return of Dr. Phlox. Now that would be great because I would have to relearn the voice if they wanted me to do it. And they probably wouldn't want me to do it. They'd get some other fucking guy to do it. But if they did ask me to do it, I still wouldn't have to wear the rubber head, which would be the main thing stopping me from considering going back to any kind of Star Trek show. Is having worn rubber, I don't know that I want to wear rubber again.
You know what? I don't think I could blame you. So let's see. Mars would like to know.
Oh, notable memories from the convention circuit. Oh, sure. I think my favorite was probably, one, my missus. Mars has met my missus. You've met my missus, Bonnie, who's a wonderful actress. She was on Chuck, playing the general, and she's been around for years. Let me rephrase that unless she hears that the wrong way. She's acting for a number of years, but she is still a young, vibrant creature. She was like, I ain't going to these conventions. And I said, oh, come on. It'll be fun. And we'll make a vacation out of it. This is shortly after I started the show. So she came to one. I don't remember which one it was. She was like, don't get me on stage. Don't. It's like, fine. So she was at the very back. She was watching the Dog and Pony Show. And I had cause to make fun of Jolene, as I often do, by suggesting that she was the gassiest actress on Star Trek, which she was. And from the back, my wife says, "Pot calling the kettle black." I want you to meet somebody. And she got up on the stage, and from that moment on, she was part of the act. Anytime we are allowed to be on stage together, those are some of my favorite memories, not just of conventions, but my favorite lifetime memories. We did a show in Germany. We were on after, I have to tell this in a way that does not sound snarky. Opening night in Germany, 3,000 fans. They're all drunk. It's Germany, for God's sake. We are the 11 o'clock show on the first night. And we follow Edward James Olmos and Nichelle Nichols, both of whom, obviously, fabulous, legendary, but serious. Their presentation is considerably more, serious. So I come on, it's like all the Germans are like, what the fuck do I do? So I came on without my pants, and my wife came on afterwards, and she spent the better portion of the first 20 minutes trying to get me to put my pants on. The byplay was very erudite, but the physical comedy was lowbrow, la, 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 blah, blah, blah. Long story short, we got a goddamn standing ovation, 3,000 drunken German fans, midnight. And that was one of the highlights of my marriage, not just of the convention circuit.
Ta-da!
Remember it. The byplay was erudite. I want to keep stressing that.
Yes.
Very erudite.
One of my favorite convention stories about you is
no pants.
I was wondering about that when I saw you get up and run out.
I've got little shorty sweatpants on, actually. I just had knee surgery, so.
Yeah. I'm glad you're feeling well enough to sit behind your desk and join us. Absolutely. Yeah. But one of my favorite convention stories is when we met, and in 2016 in New York, and I accidentally thought that you were Ethan Phillips.
Oh, that happens all the time. People always confuse me with Ethan Phillips. Sometimes I'll crash Ethan Phillips panels and pretend that I'm the real Ethan Phillips and shove him aside. Although he hasn't been about lately, so I haven't seen Ethan in ages. But no, I get confused with Ethan Phillips all the time because all of us fat, charactery alien guys look alike.
Well, what was really embarrassing about that was you were actually sitting with the Enterprise cast. I should have known better.
Oh, well, that's all right. I didn't hold it against you. Here I am.
Here you are. No, it's just
sometimes that Ethan Phillips gets confused, that people say, "Oh my God, Dr. Phlox, I loved you on Enterprise."
But then you also told that story about the package that came to your house for Ethan.
Pictures for him to sign? Yeah, I just signed them and sent them back.
How did you sign them, Ethan Phillips or John Billingsley?
I said, "Fuck you! Stop bothering me." What the fuck do you think you are? Sending me goddamn fucking shit in the mail. I have had it with this. Love, Ethan Phillips. I don't know. I'm making all that up. I don't remember this. It's entirely possible I did that, but I wouldn't have done that. I would never be rude to anybody or make anybody feel uncomfortable. But I did not send them to Ethan Phillips. I'll tell you that. Neither am I paying for Ethan's postage. Okay.
But you really did get that box. I mean, that actually did happen.
Probably. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast today, darling. I don't.
Fair enough. It's still a great story. Robert wants to know if you have any upcoming appearances scheduled.
No, it's been a fairly busy year. I just got off of a show that was shooting in Savannah called Manhunt, which is based on the Hunt for Lincoln's Assassins, and that kind of tied me up. So they invited me to come to Germany for a convention, and I couldn't do it. And I don't think there's anything else. I know there isn't anything else scheduled. I think I'm supposed to be on the cruise again in February.
End of February, beginning of March.
Yeah, and it's been great getting back on the convention circuit. I missed it. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed it after 3 or so years. I mean, I don't go to a ton of conventions. I make it sound like I'm there every weekend, but I'm not. I probably go to 4 to 6 a year, maybe. And I found last year, at the end of the year, going back to London for the first time in 3 years, that it really rekindled something in me. I get a great deal of satisfaction from getting to meet folks and play and romp around. And it reminded me how much I liked that world and how much I've missed it.
All right, Johnny, this is a bit self-serving of you to say, but Johnny Steverson.
No, Johnny wasn't there. Johnny got sick and Johnny couldn't make it. So Johnny this is utter hearsay, Johnny. Utter hearsay.
And like I said, he's just kissing your butt. So, you know.
I wasn't. Actually, the Vulcan convention, which oh, Mars, in the gutter. Nobody's going to invite me to an orgy, honey. I'm sorry, but it's like, bar the door. It's like, here it comes, lock the door, turn off the lights. All my 20s, all my 30s, I was just like, anytime I thought any hint of an orgy, it was like, is there an orgy here? I heard there might be an orgy. Like, no. I always just missed the orgy. It's like, no, we just broke up. So sorry.
Gee, did your invitation say 10? It actually started at 7.
We still have there's some cheese if you'd like, or we can give you a to-go plate, but it's like, yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I digress. I forgot. Oh, Johnny's, yes, Vulcan, which is this charming little town in bumfuck Canada outside of Alberta, which was, it wasn't named after Spock. It was named Vulcan, but they capitalized on the Star Trek reference, and so they had this small convention every year, and the entire town turns out, and the mayor dresses like he's in Star Trek, and they have a little parade. I got to be in the little go-kart leading the parade, along with Chris Doohan, who I never met before, who was absolutely charming. Do I think Dr. Phlox is still alive in the 25th century? They never really quite established how old Denobulans live, but sure, why the fuck not? Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah, I thought, like I said, I think I read somewhere you guys have a. I think you guys have like a. I think you guys have a Vulcan-ish lifespan, 200 years, give or take. So
yeah, does that work out? What century? What century were we in Enterprise? What century?
22nd.
22nd. So then I wouldn't be alive.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the 22nd. Okay, this is hello Lasso. This is my friend Magic Lasso, who knows absolutely nothing, almost next to nothing about Star Trek, but he's so supportive that he comes to my podcast.
Well, Magic, I know next to nothing about Star Trek either, so you're amongst friends here. I only watched the episodes I was in, and I wasn't in all of them, so there are still great holes, even in my Enterprise knowledge. And as for the other ones, it's like, not so much.
Okay. This is the question I have been dying to ask you, and I know that I will not embarrass you with it because
I'm unembarrassable.
You are unembarrassable. But we're switching gears. We're talking about True Blood now.
Yes.
You were the coroner, medical examiner.
I was naked for the better part of the second season.
And I believe you
had intercourse with a larch.
Yes. I want to hear about shooting that scene.
My wife was always extremely dubious about that little set of misadventures. I'd come home and she'd say, "What did you do tonight?" And it was all night shoots. Yeah, to set this straight True Blood show about vampires. The second season, a demoness manages to get the entire town under a spell. Then they're all behaving orgiastically. So I play the coroner, and the entire second season, I'm rutting. Anything that moves, I'm trying to stick my dick in it. And so I'd come home early in the morning, tough night shoot. What did you do tonight? Rubbed chocolate cake on some woman's breasts, dirty dancing, took somebody from behind. Ugh. She was like, uh-huh. And I was like, honey, it's cold as shit. For those of you who don't live in LA in the desert, it's cold. And you're naked, and they've got these big fake black contact lenses stuck in your eyes full of grit and dirt. And, simulated sex is really, there's nothing erotic about it. It is merely miserable. There was an extra, God bless her. I appreciated her her point of view, but she was always trying to reveal both breasts. You get paid by the breast, $50 a breast. So if you're trying to show both breasts, you're trying to make an extra $50. And she kept kind of fucking up the shot. They'd be like, no, hold that. We don't want to see it. We don't want that one. Not that one. There's that one. And finally I said, I will pay you $50. Just cover up the goddamn left breast. Get out of here.
So you mean fucking a tree was no fun?
I didn't actually fuck the tree. That was a reference to something that happened off screen.
Oh.
There was a woman named Patty Bethune who was my primary love partner. She was the blousy bartender, and she was great. I loved Patty. She was great fun. We were having to simulate sex, and some big extra was supposed to be galumphing through the scene, and he galumphed and kicked her in the head. It was like I thought for sure she was oh my gosh, I'm having simulated sex with an actress who was just decapitated by an extra. This will be in the trades tomorrow. She was not decapitated. She didn't even have a concussion. I don't know how she did it, but it was like it was like a moment the entire set went. She just rolled with it.
Oh my God, good for her.
Yeah.
Good for her. Okay, so while everybody out there is thinking up more questions about,
everybody's like, is your friend still awake at 3:00 in the morning? Is she still?
There she is.
I was gonna say that didn't wake her up. Come on, Kelly. Yeah. True Blood was great. They killed me off in season 5. I will say, for those folks who watch True Blood, here's a little tidbit. The end of the second season, when the demoness is about to kind of like have her final, orgiastic, the whole town is going to go up in blazes, blah, blah, blah. I was supposed to have a lot more to do in the final episode, but I had booked a cruise with my 80-year-old father, thinking his days were numbered, and they never told me what they wanted me to do. I'd made that reservation months before. I didn't want to break it. I don't think they ever quite forgave me for that, so they stopped having me back.
Oh.
Season 5. In season 5, for those of you who remember, there was a bit of a run where the mayor, a town cop, whose name is escaping me.
Yeah,
that guy,
werewolf guy,
little kind of guy who used to be on Newhart. Was the mayor on Deadwood. Wonderful actor, kind of like a strange, I'm embarrassed and I'm spacing on his name because he's a really sweet guy. Anyway, they'd written him off the show too. So they brought me back, and I was going to be the arch villain of that 5th season, or at least I was going to be, prominently featured as one of the arch villains. And they started writing these scenes in which I kept showing up late to the crime scenes for no good reason. It was because I was actually doing the horrible, depraved things, and that's why I kept showing up late. It was like, I'm too busy killing people. At the very last minute, this guy that they'd wanted to get, the sheriff, came back and said, "Oh, I'm free after all." So they brought him in. They made him the villain. And then they had me like, what the fuck do we do with John? So they, in 1 minute, had me show up at Sookie's door, ask, and they had me, I've been turned into a vampire, and Sookie stakes me while I'm trying.
Aww. That I think I do remember. I find this kind of funny. Serial killer documentaries. Well,
have you seen Cold Case, Kelly Harper? I was a particularly gruesome serial killer in Cold Case. I've been a serial killer a number of times.
Yeah, so if you ever get bored of the documentaries, go find him because
I was a serial killer of sorts on NYPD Blue. I've killed, I've raped, horrible things, all sorts of horrible things.
Somehow those roles just
intellectual property theft. I've done that.
Somehow those roles just suit you.
I know, and I'm a very nice person, especially child molestation, because I don't even like children. It's like, molest them. I don't even want them in the same room with me.
So, I was fortunate enough to get invited to your lovely cocktail party while we were all together in Vegas.
Yay!
Yay! It was so much fun hanging out with you and all my fellow podcasters and Rod Roddenberry, Anthony Montgomery, all these.
And to be fair, now this was Amy and Simon's cocktail party that they generously hosted for Trek Talk. Yes, which I think is the segue you're looking for. I'm going to help you with that. Yes.
You read my mind.
Yes, indeed. Trek Talks, which is taking place on January 14th. Is a digital fundraiser for the Hollywood Food Coalition. The Hollywood Food Coalition is an organization that I've been working for the last 6 years here in Los Angeles. We help feed and house and take care of hundreds of people experiencing homelessness, and we also collect and share about 2.5 million pounds of food a year with other not-for-profits to help augment and buttress their meal programs. And we sit down with a lot of other really cool community groups to kind of help figure out how we collectively can address problems surrounding food distribution, food deserts, food storage, food waste, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So last year, we did this event. It's called Trek Talks, and it was a digital Jerry Lewis-esque telethon where we had lots of really cool Star Trek celebrities, behind the scenes folks, scientists come on and do all sorts of cool panels, just like you were at a convention. And I was Jerry Lewis, and I helped raise money for the Hollywood Food Coalition. It was very successful. We made $80,000, and we're doing it again this year.
And there you go. And what was lovely was all those videos interwoven that, just like on the Jerry Lewis Telethon, that explain all the amazing things you do with that the Hollywood Food Coalition does, I should say, and how incredible it was how quickly they switched gears during COVID to service the community.
Yes. Yes, we had to go on the fly from a sit-down meal to a to-go meal. And we are currently in the works collaborating with a wonderful organization based in Italy that helps put together and grow programs such as ours all over the world to provide an ever more robust and ever more complete meal experience for people experiencing homelessness. So we are hoping to move into a new home in another year or so, where we can return to providing not just a sit-down meal, but in essence, a restaurant quality meal. People who are experiencing homelessness or people who are hungry can come in, have a seat at a table, have a menu, be served, be treated with the respect they deserve. So much of, I think, what happens, unfortunately, in our throwaway culture is that people who are seen as disposable, who are experiencing tough times, we as a society want nothing more than to avert our eyes. And, it's to me, one of our missions as human beings is to try and find ways to respond to people in need with as much grace and dignity and kindness as we would want.
Absolutely. And you say throwaway culture, and that also leads into food waste and how ridiculous it is that the people that have the money and can afford the food and how much of it they throw away without even thinking about the people that don't get.
Well, I mean, it's just, and I won't get on a hobby horse about this. I mean, the nature of the world we live in, the nature of a capitalist culture, the nature of the consumerist culture. I mean, we create more food than we can possibly eat. I don't, there's no real answer to that. It is baked into the pie of what it means to have a gajillion people on the planet. The structures that local, state, federal government need to create to try and rescue more of that food and to share it with communities. It's patchwork, it's complicated, it's difficult, and we can do better. Obviously, the most of the food that gets wasted is the food that you buy, and I'm guilty of this just as we all are, and you put it in your refrigerator and you never get around to eating it. I don't know that there's a solution to that. What there is a solution for is to look at the waste that comes out of supermarkets and a variety of other food distributors that instead of getting mulched, actually gets rescued and shared with communities in need.
Right. In fact, it was the Daily Show I was watching, and they were talking about how the Best By date is incredibly misleading.
Yeah.
And it leads to wastefulness because people won't buy it, not realizing that just because Best By date was yesterday doesn't mean you can't eat it.
Yeah, and the challenge is, I mean, I won't go into the tall grass here, but there's a Senate Bill 1383, I believe, in California that basically is trying to say to, let's say, a grocery store, hey, we mandate that you, in essence, save or rescue 20% more of the food that you're now throwing out. The challenge is, how does that come to me, a quote food distributor who is trying to get food to people in need? We don't have enough transportation capacity, storage capacity, refrigeration capacity, or volunteer capacity. So even if you change the laws to mandate that grocery stores save more food, it doesn't address the problem that exists on the ground, which is we don't have the necessary resources to get the food to people. Similarly, for instance, I think when you look at the issue of homelessness and poverty, it's not just about build more domiciles. People who are in trouble need mental health providers. Having somebody who is placed in transitional housing or semi-permanent supportive housing, if you don't have mechanisms to help take care of them and to deal with some of their issues surrounding substance abuse, loneliness, isolation, fear, absence of job skills, all you've done is put them someplace, you avert your eyes, you're back on the streets again, in all likelihood in months or a year.
Yeah, a symptom isn't fixing the problem. Like curing a symptom does not fix the entire problem.
Yeah, and it's a challenge. I mean, this is for me, candidly, after Trump, after that election, I felt like, the only way that I can live in this world is to feel like I have done something in response to what I thought was a crime. And so for me, trying to figure out ways to be more involved in the world. But, this is, I don't think it's band-aiding at all, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that it is a drop in the bucket when it comes to what we as a society need to address. And I don't have, unfortunately, great solutions for how we start addressing some of the systemic problems more intelligently as a collective entity.
Right. And Kelly I'm not sure where you live. Obviously, if it's 3 a.m., I'm going to say Europe. But so it's not just an American problem. It is definitely a global issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, one of many, I mean, so much of, what our work is, it's sort of about the conjunction where food meets need. The part of me that cares about need and that cares about poverty also says, hey, we've got a school, we've got in America, we've got here in LA. Now, this is to me, I think, kind of telling. 40 kids in a class in LA Unified School District. Our tax base does not support a good enough school system to be able to educate our children. And when you have 40 kids in a class of a variety of different skills, temperaments, dispositions, family backgrounds, language capacities, the likelihood is that a very small percentage of them are going to graduate with the kind of skills that allow them to enter into a workforce. Here in one of the most expensive cities in the world, we basically doom, in my opinion, 70 to 80% of the kids who live here to low-level, shitty jobs. Surprise, surprise, a good percentage of them start taking drugs and living on the streets. You know, what's the solution to that? It starts with our caring enough about our kids and our society to feel like education is important, but
Right. No, I
you love me better when I was just fucking around.
I promised we were going to talk about this, so we're talking about it. So Mars wants to thank you.
I'm an unapologetic and unadulterated lefty, which does not make me a socialist. It just makes me somebody who feels like we have a compact together, all of us in a society, to care about each other and to try and figure out ways to help. I think that's why what makes a civilization a civilization. And to me, the whole point of Star Trek is supposed to be we can solve shit by leaning in towards each other, with each other, and putting our dumbass differences aside and focusing on our commonalities.
I mean, that started with the original series. Has always talked about that.
Yeah, my argument down the years with people about the show and about the franchise has been sometimes I kind of feel like it's not enough to say perfectible universe, huzzah, and now let's tell fun stories. It's about how do you get there? How do you get there? What is it that allows you to actually get over some of these differences? And when Star Trek does a wonderful job of trying to tell those stories, I sometimes want Star Trek to kind of say, let's which is I thought what Enterprise was maybe going to do more of. By bringing it back to a time closer to our own time. I would love Star Trek one day to do a show that basically says, here's how we got there. Here's how some of these horrible fracases that we are engaged in around culture and gender and race and politics and et cetera and religion and blah, 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 blah. Here's how we began to resolve some of it.
Right. Okay, well, first of all, let me get this in there. Faith is a teacher.
Bravo.
And Kelly is in England, yes. And I've seen a lot, that England has a huge problem with food waste.
Yeah, and so much of this is, obviously one of the great drivers these days is unfortunately that, barbarous villain Vladimir Putin's decision to invade the Ukraine has, we were having problems with the supply chain post-COVID, but Ukraine, one of the world's great grain providers, and obviously Russia is one of the countries that Europe relies on for its energy needs. The nature of what has happened in our global economy, and so much of it can be traced to that one vile human being's depredations. That's
all right.
Horrible tragedy. I'm
playing favorites. This is one of my oldest and dearest friends, Nick. Thank you for joining us. And he said he'd love to see that. I'm figuring that's about the show.
The show that takes us from here to there. Yeah.
Well, it's been a long road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always considered First Contact the Enterprise prequel. Mm-hmm. But even then, it deals with the aftermath of the Third World War.
Yeah.
You never see, it's like, okay, so how did the Third World War start? There's a lot of gaps in the history that Star Trek could be telling.
Yeah, I'm talking through my ass. I realize the nature of what Star Trek does and how it appeals to people and its fundamental optimism and the heart of its message probably is perversely compromised if you actually sort of tried to tell the stories that imagined, in detail how the journey began. It's a metaphor, and I get it.
Right.
So you don't want to get too literal about it. But I do sometimes kind of feel like, in our storytelling generally, Star Trek, outside of Star Trek, I think it's a challenge for writers in the genre to not be exclusively dystopic. And I find that there's sometimes an absence of a great writing that kind of, cogitates like, how do we do it? How do we do it? How do we get there?
Yeah. Yeah, because all you ever see on Star Trek is they preach about, well, we've evolved past money. Well, we've done this. How?
Yeah, and the reason they don't address it is because it's probably not, not doable. I mean, humans are humans, and there you go. But
Right.
it is nonetheless, I think, one of the great challenges of all fiction, both to present the utopic and the dystopic. And sometimes I think, understandably, I have a dystopic sensibility myself, but I do think the world we're living in right now, it bends us towards, such gloom and doom that we can't envision anymore the ways. And yet the world has progressed because there are people who say, what if we could, here's a great idea.
Right. The irony, I think, too, is that technology, it's like people are always saying, oh, well, Star Trek inspired tablets and Star Trek inspired this. And it's like, yeah, and Star Trek inspired all this. And in Star Trek, we've made it to this great utopia. But for us,
it's not structural. And that's my big issue. And that's why I was excited about working with the Food Coalition, is because as somebody who's always been interested in structures and the nature of the way human beings come together to collaborate, I had theater companies. Mm-hmm. I was very interested in how the Food Coalition could grow, how the board could grow, how our community outreach could improve, yada, yada. The work is not, tech is a tool. But the process has to be rooted in people working together to create systems that work better.
Right.
And I'm interested, for all that it fucked up, the United Nations, and before that the League of Nations, and so much of the modern 20th century edifice, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these institutions that were created, that were designed to try and address as best they could problems of a global scale. Our Constitution itself, the U.S. Constitution, and all countries' constitutions, these efforts to try and say, well, how do we, what if we, maybe it works like this inability or unwillingness to go back and say, things change. Structures change. Let's look at it again. Let's see if we can address what doesn't work anymore. Our Constitution, I don't see it. I don't see it in a way. I don't see us getting together to have a constitutional convention, but it's probably what ultimately we need. We need to find some way to take it and look at it again and go, should every state have 2 senators? Is 435 folks representing a country that is 17 times larger than it was when the Constitution was written? Does that make sense? Structure.
Right.
I look at what's happening in Great Britain. I mean, your guest is from Great Britain. I mean, surely there are some modifications to a parliamentary structure that
oh my God. There were
8 guys in a fucking room were picking the prime minister. It's like,
yeah,
that's fucked up.
I knew that this last one was short-lived after she put her foot in her mouth 112 times. I'm thinking, yeah, so how long is she going to last? And I just heard this morning they're looking for another one.
Well, they got another one now. I mean, it's like don't even. I know. I mean, every step of the way, the process becomes less and less democratic. It's like first it was 170,000 card-carrying, conservatives voting. Now it's like, okay, now we just have the parliamentarians themselves voting. I mean, pretty soon it's just going to be like, okay, we got these 3 guys. We locked them in a room. They're going to pick our next prime minister.
They're going to roll some dice and we're going to figure something out. Faith, in response to your question about better storytelling, she thought that they were going to do it in Picard, but obviously because Picard went back in time.
Yeah.
But
and again, I get it. It's not, it's first and foremost their obligation is to try and tell exciting, fun stories, and
right.
Star Trek simply may not be the vehicle. Yay, Mars Devore. Absolutely. If you're listening to this and you haven't voted yet, vote now if you can. And make sure you vote. And if you're not going to vote for the Democrats, then pretend I didn't say a goddamn thing.
There you go. I would like to think that everybody within the sound of our voice would, but
Yes, I know. And my dad was Republican. I've known a lot of wonderful and honorable Republicans. I applaud. I never thought I'd say this, what Liz Cheney did by standing up and repudiating her party. But there are 300 people running for office, significant offices in the Republican Party, who deny the legitimacy of the last election. That party has become authoritarian and has become borderline fascistic.
So to kind of swing things back around, I think it was Travis, but it's so far up in the conversations now I'm not going to be able to find it. But Travis, you were the one that wanted to know, what was it like to work with Scott Bakula?
It was hell. It was hell on earth. It was just,
I've heard he's such a bastard on the set.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't. You ask that question, it's like I get the tremors in my. Scott's just one of the most wonderful guys you'll ever meet. There are people. Mark Harmon is another person I did NCIS once, who understand what it means to be the quarterback of a show, what it means to have the responsibility of being number one on the call sheet, how critical it is that you set the tone for the entire show. And Scott knew everybody's birthday. He went out of his way to introduce himself to all of the extras. He celebrated the significant events in everybody's life. He was a joyful, wonderful, but professional guy at every step of the way. I can't say enough good things about Scott. I really can't. I loved him so much that I actually, people took shit from the show afterwards, like took Faye's pistol, or I took Scott. He's in my bathroom. I have had him locked up there I let him out to do NCIS because, he was bringing some money in, but
Right. Yeah, you got to dust him off every once in a while, let him out.
Yeah.
And he's going to have a new series on NBC.
What's that?
It's some sort of ranch, Yellowstone-y kind of thing. He lives on a ranch somewhere out in Big Sky Country.
All right, fair enough.
So,
there's television. It's like, has anybody watched the new Quantum Leap?
I have. Yeah, it's this is my theory. They've said publicly that Scott's not going to be involved, but they're basically on a quest to find Sam Beckett because I guess
okay. I didn't know that.
He came home from his last leap.
Sam Beckett, the fictional character, or Samuel Beckett, the famous French existentialist?
Sam Beckett was Scott's character.
Yeah, I know. I was making a little joke.
Okay, just check. Well,
it always amused me that he was named after Samuel Beckett.
I never even realized that. You're right. No, you said you didn't even watch yourself on, I don't know.
I don't, but I Samuel Beckett.
You got me on that one. So it looks like the way they're setting this up is that this new guy is leaping around looking for Scott, or looking for Sam. And I've likened it.
I just auditioned for it today, in fact. So
did you seriously?
I did. I probably won't get it, but
you should. But that would be awesome. Well, listen, you guys had Dean Stockwell on your show, so why shouldn't you be on the new Quantum Leap?
Yes, you. Unfortunately, they don't. Nobody actually asked me for my opinion about these kinds of things.
I know
how little anybody cares about my opinion. By and large, say for yourself and the lovely people who are listening to your program.
Well, as Dominic had said once, there's a million reasons why people don't get picked for parts. So
there are indeed. I was recently cast in an episode of NCIS Hawaii, and I tried. Sometimes I'll watch myself on television. It depends on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I had very little interest in watching that particular episode, and I turned on the television, and there I was, in spite of myself. There I was, and my stomach entered the frame a good 5 seconds before the rest of me did, which is, I think, one of the reasons that I might not work so much. It's like hiring two guys. It's like I got to pay John, and I got to pay his gut. I don't know.
See, Kelly's got an idea. On the quest to find Sam, he leaps into
old fat Phlox. He leaps into old fat Phlox, not old man Phlox, old fat Phlox.
There you go. This is my personal theory. I have no idea, but because I feel like they're really setting this up. I liken it to, if you've ever watched ER.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you remember the George Clooney story with Julianne Margulies' character.
Yes.
And George leaves the show, and then a few years later, Julianne's leaving the show, and they swear George isn't going to be there. You're not going to see George. He's not coming back for her last show. Forget it. He's off being Mr. Movie Star. And then in the very final scene, who shows up?
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah.
I just have this feeling that if they're looking for Sam,
I know how to find him, and it's a check with a lot of zeros at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, hello, it's on NBC. Scott's on NBC. I have a feeling it might just be a walk across the soundstage to another soundstage. You never know.
Yeah. It'd be one of those crossover episodes where he shows up with his Stetson and it's like, I've been on this ranch the whole time.
It's like
Phlox. I could be like Edgar Buchanan on Petticoat Junction. I could be like Sam, don't you think you better nobody knows where the hell you are. You've been here in this goddamn Montana ranch. Get back there. Let them know where you are. It's the soundstage right next door.
Yeah, I think he's going to show up at least for like a minute, just so that they can find him. But I think they're weaving.
I don't know what the ratings are like, so let's not assume.
I don't either. Well, that's true too. I mean, if it goes on break mid-season and doesn't come back, then so much for that idea.
And on any number of shows where it's like, oh, that's just not coming back.
Yeah, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, goodbye, good riddance, and sometimes I'm like, God damn it.
Yes, well, I felt that way about every show I was on.
Well, of course you did.
Primarily because, yes.
Because the paycheck stopped.
Bonnie, you got to go get a job. Canceled my show.
Speaking of Bonnie getting a job, you did help employ her for that one episode of Enterprise.
Again, I had nothing to do with it. She auditioned and she got the job. I think, in fact, she tells a very funny story about how they went out of their way to not acknowledge they knew her. They'd met her at cast parties and what have you.
Oh, really?
I'm feeling very nonplussed. Like, I auditioned, they never said hi. They didn't acknowledge they knew who I was. And I said, I think that's probably just their shtick. And she was convinced it's because she sucked, which is my wife's go-to posture is, I must have sucked. I must have fucked it up. I must have done something wrong. It's like, she could save the world and be like, I made a mess. I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up. Don't. Like, Bonnie, you saved the world. I know, but I could have done it less noisily, and I feel terrible about this.
Oh, wow. Well, like Dom said, a million reasons.
That shit for me, I'll tell you.
Yeah. But no, she was great. That happens to be one of my favorite episodes.
Oh, really? The Borg? That's kind of the shark episode, I think, in a lot of people's estimation.
Well, I think sometimes people just don't get it because they sit there and argue, well, TNG's the one that discovered the Borg. I'm like, let's look at this. First of all, First Contact altered that timeline a little bit.
Well, now, if you're going to talk about Star Trek, I'm going to have to make the white noise in my head.
Okay. All right. But no, I think it fits. All right. I'll just condense it down to it fits with everything that went on. I think they did it well enough that it fits canon because that's what everybody talks about.
That was a David Livingston directed episode. David Livingston, who's actually also on the board of the Hollywood Food Coalition. And I want to shout out to David because he also has helped put up and will again help this year put up Trek Talks 2, which is what we're calling it. A lovely, 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 wonderful, talented gentleman who's directed more episodes of Star Trek than anybody else. I think he lapsed the field by 20 or 30 episodes. He directed that episode. And his instruction to me, because I was the only person who actually ever figured out how to cure Borgness.
Yeah, stop the nanobots.
I stopped the nanobites by putting myself through the radiation chamber. And anyway, so I'm going through the radiation chamber, and David is like, it would be cooler if you kept your eyes open. It'd be like, well, but would he really? I mean, would you keep your eyes open if you're going through the radiation chamber? It's radiation that's good enough to kill a bunch of nanobites. I think I'd close my eyes. In fact, I think I'd wear a sleep mask.
At least.
David won. So there's this ridiculous shot of me going, whoa! Eyes wide open.
Who cares about science when there's drama involved?
That was more or less David's point. Yes, I learned long ago. It's like don't hold up camera. Don't argue. Jolene, the episode in which she had poem far at the end of that episode. Cooler equals creepier. Yes, I suppose so. But cooler also equals nonsensical. Poem far episode at the end of it, Jolene was convinced that I would have been kind enough to have brought her a pillow and a blanket. She's sleeping on the floor. It's like, okay, that's fine by me. And the director, Roxanne Dawson, was like, no, I don't. That's going to kind of look cheesy. I don't want to do that. And Jolene was, I want a pillow and blanket. You don't get a pillow and a blanket. I want a pillow and a blanket. You don't get a pillow and a blanket. It was 2 hours. A pillow and a blanket. No, Bill. No.
How was Roxanne as a director?
She was great. She was great. In that particular instance, I would have just given Jolene a pillow and a blanket, but she was great.
Well, she also directed that episode where everybody was hanging upside down in the cargo hold.
Yes, I don't think I was in that one much. She directed, as I recall, it's weird. Some episodes I remember vividly for their content. Some I remember vividly because of the relationship with the director. Some, I'm more obscure on. I can't remember if Rox directed the episode in which I'm running around naked or not.
Well, you know what? My loyal followers know that I am versed in Trek. I am not so versed in Trek. So if I say somebody go to IMDb and find that for me, because nobody wants to watch my resting research face if I try to find it.
I could not tell you what the title of that episode was because they all sound the same in my head. But yes, I would have called it "Phlox Runs Around Naked," the episode where Phlox runs around naked.
Oh, what? Oh my gosh! See, it's funny. I've also told this story a couple times, but a couple years ago, when I was in Vegas, in fact, I was with my buddy Roy, and we were going around saying hi to the Enterprise people, and I walked up to Anthony's table, and he was selling the script from the communicator with autographed. Uh-huh. And I said, "Oh, that was such a great episode where Malcolm lost the communicator, blah blah." And Anthony just looked at me. He's like, "I don't know, what's the script?" And I said, "No, I get that, but I mean, it's in the title." So I said. But I looked at him and I said, I swear I am not one of those nerds that knows the title to every single one of your episodes.
Barbara, that one, I ain't judging.
Right. But I was just giving her, I said, but that one, is kind of obvious, the communicator, and it fits right. He had that great picture of the cast at Porthos's funeral.
Yes. Now that was by the way, that was me.
Right.
Credit for this because that we were never together because I was rarely on the bridge. And we certainly were never together in civilian garb. And yes, this was a small bit from the episode "A Night in Sick Bay."
Right.
Scott has a horrible dream that his dog has died, and there's a funeral for Porthos. And we were all together on the set. And I asked Michael Demerit, our second AD, first AD, second AD, third AD, one of the ADs, to take a photo. And the photo was great. It was a little blurry, which is why you can tell it's not a professional photographer. But I bootlegged it and started bringing it on the convention circuit, and all the other actors wanted it.
Right. So I'm swearing to Anthony, I don't know every single episode by title. And somebody saw that picture and they went, "What episode's that from?" And I went over and went, "A Night in Sick Bay, baby." And then Anthony looked at me. I'm like, "I promise these two." But it was just a lovely because I love Anthony. He is so gracious and.
I love Anthony too. Well, my nickname for him was the human car alarm, but I don't think he liked it because on the set every morning, I'd be first one in on the days I worked because I had to get my rubber head on. So it was like 5 a.m. It's just classical music. The set is empty. You could hear the crickets and the birds in the trees. Brad Look is the quietest guy in the history of the world. Putting my makeup on. I'm reading the New York Times, and I could hear Anthony from all the way across the fucking lot come on to that. "Hey, Charlie, how are you doing? Hey, everybody! Human car alarm has arrived."
Oh, that's great. And guess what? You were right. Doctor's Orders was directed by Roxanne.
There you go. Doctor's Orders. Yeah. It's funny because I always liked working with Roxanne. One episode where I'd gone out carousing the night before because I didn't have work that next day. And I got home. This is back in the day when the scripts arrived at your door, pre-digital. And so I got home and there was a rewrite at the door. I was like, "Oh, okay, rewrite." And I looked it up and it was like, "I'm working tomorrow. I'm working with 2 new scenes tomorrow." It's like, well, I'm 4 martinis in, so it's like, I ain't having this tonight. So I go to bed. I wake up as early as I possibly can, and I try and cram these 2 scenes in. I cram the first one in okay, but the second one is full of the gobbledygook. It's like the dilithium crystals and the endocrine system and some alien species. And last shot of the day, last scene of the day, and I was like, I could not get through it. There was one word I stumbled over it for about the 50th time. It was like, but like Bajoran or whatever it was. So blah, 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 blah. The entire crew goes, "Bajoran!" It's like, I'm sorry. I just can't. And
it's not my fault.
That was a Roxanne episode. And it's unfortunately my lasting memory of Roxanne is this look of, because I was usually pretty good with my words, and there was this just look of like, it's like martinis. I didn't know.
Nobody told me to be home on time and not drink.
Yeah. Nowadays, of course, you get the text, but this was 2002.
Right.
It We didn't get fucking texts, you know. I mean, we must have gotten. I honestly don't remember what they did, whether it was phone calls or how they shifted, how they pulled or pushed our calls, or
Right.
but I definitely, I remember I think the year for me was like somewhere around after the show ended, 2004, 2005 was like, oh, okay, this is how it all works now. It's all text-driven communication, and I had to adjust to that because.
Right. Have you ever wanted to be behind the camera? Have you ever been behind the camera?
I was a director. I was a stage director for a number of years. I had a theater company that adapted fiction for the stage. We actually presented short stories verbatim. And as I was leaving the company in 1994, when my first marriage broke up, we were beginning to morph into doing novellas and adaptations of novels. And I really liked that process, that work. This was bare bones theater, no props, no sets, just like the words and actors in space. And I really liked that work, and I really liked directing. But I had zero. I'm not a tech guy. I suck at tech. I don't have a brain for it. I have zero interest in. I've never had any interest in doing any of the things you have to do to be good at taking the picture.
Oh, okay. So hopefully we'll still be seeing you well into the future in front of the camera.
If there are directors I've worked with, like Arvin Brown was a wonderful director, came out of Long Wharf, who had a wonderful sensibility when it came to working with the actors. I like that part. If there's ever a tag team thing where I wouldn't have to fucking worry about lining up the shots or dealing with any of the tech, and I could just work with actors. Right. I like that, and I'm good at that. I'm good at actually here's the heart of a scene. Here's what the essence of the scene is. Here's what we're not getting. Here's how we have to pull this action out a little more firmly. Here's a beat you're missing. I think if you're over here in space, that's going to tell the story better. I'm good at that stuff, but I the setups and the he crossed the line. No, he didn't cross the line. All that shit is like. I will say that on our show, because again, we were the show that killed the franchise, they put the kibosh at Paramount's insistence on letting the actors learn how to direct, which is something that had happened in the previous iterations of Star Trek, how Rox became a director,
right,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was never open to us. I can't imagine that I would have taken them up on it. I'm kind of glad it didn't happen because Dominic would have taken them up on it, and the idea that Dominic would have been directing me.
He actually mentioned that in the Shuttle Pod. He's mentioned that in a couple Shuttle Pod shows that he had a kin for possibly.
I'm not sure. I don't think anyone was going to survive that.
He's also told me a story. He also told me a story about when he was on the set of Hollywood Kills, how he had to act as an AD because the AD on the set sucked. So,
yeah. I will. Oddly enough, just coming off of this show about Lincoln, I think there's a great challenge if you're dealing with great, throngs of extras.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the job is you have to get all the extras together and get them on the same page about what the fucking story is.
Mm-hmm.
I have always found that to be one of the skills that I think I understand it because first and second ADs, they have so much to do.
Yeah.
What gets neglected is, okay, guys, so here's the story. Let me provide you with the context and let me walk you through it really specifically so you understand what it is I need to see in this beat, in that beat. I need to see something different from each of you. So let's think about how we do that. That's a time-consuming process, and it usually gets neglected on shows. If you watch extras, you can usually kind of see some of the extras I don't have a clue what to do, so I'm just going to be.
Yeah, I've done background work in New York, and the first big gig I had was on Homeland being part of a protesting crowd. Mm-hmm. And they're just here's a sign, stand and yell.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and to me, that's always unfortunately kind of one of the great neglected aspects of the work is I would hire somebody whose job would be to know the story inside and out and to make sure that the background artists are really directed carefully. I was on a show called Fear Itself with Bonnie. And the gig was we lived in this kind of perverse gated community where we were all, treated like lords, but we couldn't leave and we had to follow the rules. And consequently, there was a sense of I don't like it here anymore. That was not explained to any of the party goers at the party scene. So some of the outre behavior that Bonnie and I engage in, it's they're not understanding the context from which it springs. And yes, I was while nobody was looking, I was guys, gather around. So here's what the fuck is going on. So you're in this gated community and you've given everything to be in it, but they will not let you say goddamn thing against it. And now you're scared shitless. Okay, don't let the second AD know I talked to you.
All right. So War Dog says Dominic would have had Phlox out on the. He probably would have.
Well, you have to understand, they don't get to. The director doesn't get to write the episode, so fortunately,
Well, that's
he would
true.
not have that kind of latitude. But I could definitely see somebody. Oh, very good, darling. I think let's do it again with a little more fervor. Just a little more esprit. Just let's put something into it so it doesn't sound quite so bad.
Let's see. The feeling, yeah, IMDb is a godsend. I'm sorry, because it drives me crazy when I see people that I know. Okay. Mars wants to know, behind being approached for unbelievable. Hilarious train wreck, I think, is being kind, by the way. But
I didn't see it. I will say that I, as I suspect is true for many of us, and you get your agent calls and says, hey, you got an offer, and here's what they're going to pay you, and we'll send you the material. And so they sent that one scene. They said they'll pay me X. It was like I knew I was going to be with Jeff Coombs. I knew I was going to be with Armin, and I knew it was a Star Trek parody. It was like, and it's going to be half a day's work. It's like, sure, okay. That's all I knew. That's all I know now, other than hearing through the grapevine some stories about its eventual future. But I don't. There's a saying, since this is a gutter talk. My father, who was a gay ex-sailor, always said, fuck him and forget him. Yeah. And yes, so my feeling about, generally speaking, the industry and about shows you're in is it's like, that's it, did it, gone, out of sight, out of mind.
Collector check.
Yeah, and it's not to say that when you show up, you do the best job you can, no matter what the fuck.
Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes it's lowbrow, and sometimes it's highbrow, and sometimes it's a procedural, and you feel like you've done it a bajillion times before, but you always do the best you can under the circumstances. But as an actor, you don't control the circumstances. You don't write the script. You don't control the nature of how it's being filmed. You don't control any aspect of how it eventually gets put together and put out into the world. And it's like, the more you worry about shit that you cannot control, the more you're wasting your life. So I don't.
Yep. Nick is a New York actor, and he agrees with you 100%. Yeah. Just real quick, this is General Zod.
Hi, General Zod.
Yep, he's a big lap cat, and I think he's trying to tell me that he misses me because, I'm in here instead of cuddling with him. But you know what? I get to see you all the time. I never see this guy, so you're gonna have to wait.
I got a couple of kitties myself that I've been waiting to come and.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't shown up. But what I wanted to say was, I think it was one of the first times I saw William Shatner on stage, and somebody asked him if he's ever regretted anything that he's ever done, and he said why? He said, and being an actor is a part-time job.
Yeah.
You never know where your next check's going. He said, every job I've ever done, put food on my table, put my kids through school.
Yeah.
And he said exactly what you said. You get your script, you do the best job you possibly can. That's all.
I mean, none of which is to say that, look, if you have the luxury of choice,
sure,
then it's a different question. It's like, okay, what would I rather do? Would I rather do this really cool, interesting film that's shooting in Prague, or would I rather do this police procedural that's going to pay me a lot more money? And then you have to make some complicated and demanding choices. I think in life you make all sorts of choices, and looking back, you may go, I wish I'd picked the other one. That's something separate and distinct.
Right. That's not a regret. That's
Yeah, I mean, it is.
But not to the point where you hang your head in shame because your name's attached to something
and
else.
Certainly there are times when it's like you see yourself on screen, and I think every actor who's ever been on screen feels this, where you kind of go, if I could do that again, I would do it this way. If I could do that again, I or times when you feel like probably it was worth the fight in the moment to say, guys, I think we're missing the fucking boat here. And you didn't fight. Or sometimes it's the obverse. You kind of feel like I probably held up camera more than I should have, because in the end, it wasn't worth this beat. But again, yes, you forgive yourself the bajillion trespasses of life in this business.
Right. Well, isn't that a big reason why a lot of actors don't like to watch themselves, is because they'll drive themselves crazy with the what ifs?
Yeah, I mean, so much. It's an edit. It's an editor's art in many respects. I remember doing the pilot for a show called The Others, which was on in 1999, and there was a scene. I was supposed to have seen some spooky bit of paranormal,
Mm-hmm.
hocus pocus, and there was a reaction shot, and my reaction shot was like, well, they kept the reaction shot, but they didn't show the thing I was reacting to. They edited it out.
Oh my gosh.
So in the middle of the scene, all of a sudden, it's like blah 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 blah, and they just cut to me going, without any context. And
Right.
you watch that and you go, why did they keep that shot? I look like a fucking idiot, and it's unmoored.
Right.
I have no control.
Yeah, it's fun because when they announced that Connor was going to be an American Made, and then I saw him in Vegas, and I'm like, oh, can you do your George Bush? I'd really love to hear, a little preview. And he said, no. He said, go see the movie. And I said, okay. And he goes, but I might not be in it. He said, because his scene didn't drive the movie. It was just like this little extra piece. He said, so I may not even be in it. So I looked at him, I said, so you want me to go spend $10 on a movie that you may or may not even be in?
It's not like he's going to make any extra money if you send
Right, exactly. But I was just teasing him. And he said, I'll make a deal with you. If I'm not in it, next time I see you, I'll do it. But
all right.
Yeah, but he was in it. But of course he had seen it, and he said, yeah, obviously his scene was longer, but the movie was already long enough, so they chopped it out.
It's one of the
nice very good George Bush.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he's a very talented guy. It's one of the things I always sort of miss about old movies. Is like Bonnie and I always reference the Bishop's Wife. There's this wonderful scene in The Bishop's Wife where the characters slowly begin to kind of come into the frame together, and the camera never moves. It just kind of lets the scene come together, and it just holds on everybody. It's David Niven, and I think Elsa Lanchester and Cary Grant and Loretta Young, and one fifth character, all in the scene, playing the scene, and it never cuts away. There's no one shot, there's no two shot. It's just the master, and it's fabulous. It's something that we know. It's so much quick cutting these days. It's one of the things that I kind of find tiresome about contemporary storytelling.
Right. Well, I was going to ask, do you think that has something to do with the technology, that everything is so much easier to do that? I think back in the day?
Yes, and also this, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We tell ourselves this story that we have shorter attention spans, so we have to, as the stories get shorter and the books get shorter, and we read on screens and yada yada yada. And to the extent that we buy into that, then yes, we have shorter attention spans. So when we're watching, I think something, if we feel like it doesn't have enough, visuals, the fear is that we're going to get bored.
Right.
I personally think I'm all for kinetic filmmaking. There's some wonderful and brilliant films that work because they have this extraordinary visual flair. But I also still have a soft spot for, again, movies like The Bishop's Wife, where they're not afraid of just fucking, putting the camera on great actors and trusting the words.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's been movies that I've seen recently, and you know that they've been, you're like, where's the rest of the story? Who decided where to get rid of what? And it's sad.
Yeah. And what, I come from the theater, although I don't do theater anymore. What one loves about the theater, the optics of the theater sometimes are self-defeating. If the theater is too big, you can't actually really kind of register the expressive nature of the actors. Mm-hmm. But in a small house, when you have the ability to kind of grok the entire stage, and as multiple actors on the stage reacting to each other in real time, there's a different kind of complexity to the story, because you're seeing what is life, which is the fluidity of change in the moment, overcoming everybody at the same time. Movies can accomplish that to an extent with quick cutting, but
right.
You lose some of that texture.
Yeah. Not that this is a great cinematic, but I just remembered it was the last Jurassic Park. They edited it so badly that you could tell that you were missing pieces of the story.
Well, frankly, almost any James Bond picture, it's like, I never know what the fuck's happening.
Right.
It's like there was one, I think it was the one after Casino Royale, the Daniel Craig version, the second one, and there's a car chase. It begins where Casino Royale ends off, and they're, going to take Mr. White, I think is his name, to his, well-deserved comeuppance. And there's the most confusing goddamn car fucking chase I've ever seen in my life. It's like, I don't understand. I don't know what the hell is happening. Batman is another one. I think there was one of the Batman versions where between the Merc and the nature of the
mm-hmm.
intensity of the action and the cross cuts, it's like I don't understand the event.
Right.
I'm not situated enough in the event, and so I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. You lose interest. Okay, Robert wants to know, do you have a most memorable role?
Probably on television or film, it would have been either The Nine, which was a very short-lived series on ABC, I want to say in 2006 or 7, about a bank robbery that goes awry. And the premise was that half of each episode deals with what happens during this bank hostage situation.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I didn't watch it, but it sounds familiar.
Yeah, the second half of each episode was kind of interesting. It's hard to explain, but basically it fast forwards in time. So you see who survived and how they're getting on with their lives, but you don't really quite know what happened in the bank. So as the episodes progress, you're seeing the a few minutes at a time of the bank robbery and what went wrong and who got killed and why they got killed and what happened. And in the second half, you're seeing how these people have dealt with the trauma of having survived it and how they're trying to recover. My character was a Nebush who actually becomes a hero, and his transformation is quite remarkable. And as opposed to most television shows, this show was rooted, particularly in my character, in radical transformation. So every episode was like, he's trying new things, he's leaving his wife, he's having an affair, he's like, so, for me, getting to do something on television that had that much,
right,
playfulness was rare and fun.
All right. So just in case anybody wants to go looking for it, Mars is advising against it, I guess, because they can't find it.
Yeah, it was short-lived. It came on, it premiered, and it was supposed to be the big hit of the season. Chi McBride was in it, Tim Daly.
Oh, I love Chi McBride.
It was a great cast. And unfortunately, they tried to sell it and market it as something it wasn't, which was sort of a, creepy, suspenseful mystery. It really was more a drama about the nature of personal transition.
I was going to say, it sounds more like a psychological kind of.
Yeah, but it tried to have an action-adventure hook, and somehow it ended up falling between two stools. The other answer to that question is, as a stage actor, probably Chekhov. I was in a production of The Seagull, which, for those who aren't Chekhov fans, is one of his early masterpieces about, in part, about a young arrogant wannabe poet on a country estate who is desperately in love with a woman who is not going to give him the time of day. And I would never get to play that kind of part, that kind of weird, perverse, tortured romantic lead. And I was cast in that. And that was one of the most thrilling stage experiences I ever had.
Okay, I gotta give War Dog calls us. The chat pack is the nickname for everybody that watches The Seventh Rule and Ryan T. Husk's and Sirach Lofton's. And I have gotten, thanks to War Dog, I am Chat Pack 2.0. So he's been double watching, and Linda just joined us from Chat Pack to Chat Pack 2.0, and she's pretty sure she's watched the 9. Thank you for dropping in, Linda. I share time because I kind of start right as their Monday night gig is winding down.
Oh, okay.
And I have always said there is so much Star Trek to cover. I have love for every other Star Trek podcast. I don't understand why Star Trek podcasts feel the need to be competitive.
I'm apparently going to be on every Star Trek podcast ever.
You really are. You're just making the rounds. And
I know. It's like I feel like a slut. Apparently I'm one of those guys who's going to go to the opening of an envelope. I've been on every podcast around. I enjoy it. So,
and you're easy. That just means you're easy.
I guess it is. I know I'm easy, but I really need to come up with some different stories because I feel like I'm just telling the same story over and over again. I got to come up with some different ones.
Well, in your long and storied career, I'm sure there's a couple that are rolling around in the back of your head that haven't pushed their way forward yet.
They probably are, but they probably concern roles I've had in obscure pieces that nobody's aware I've even been in. So I'm going to have to pull them to the forefront.
Yeah, you are.
Somebody ever asked me about martial law.
Oh.
Martial Law, a very obscure television show on CBS. I think it only lasted half a season. I don't remember the premise, but I played an evil food inspector who brings bugs into kitchens, sets them loose, and then threatens to give them a Z grade if they don't pay me off. So I get my comeuppance one day. The hero comes up while I'm in the car, and he takes my box of cockroaches and he dumps them on me. And I had like cockroaches all over me. It was like freaking out. And they have a cockroach wrangler. They have a guy who has to like pick each cockroach off.
Right.
Like, it's animal rights.
No cockroaches were harmed in the making of this.
No. So I have to sit there in the car. Well, it's like, oh, Charlie, I got Sam, I got Bertha, I'm missing a cockroach.
Exactly. John, take off your shoes. Where's the fucking cockroach?
So I get out of the car. They let me out of the car. Be very careful. That cockroach could be anywhere. It's like, fuck.
Yep.
Put my hand in my pocket. It's like, I found Bertha.
I don't know if you've heard of the Lappy Awards, but again, back to the Seventh Rule podcast and Virtual TrekCon. It's something that Ryan Husk and his group, including Melissa Longo and Mohammed Noor, they put together the first ever Star Trek Awards, and they call them the Live Long and Prosper Awards. And they had their inaugural year a few months ago. So they're going to be doing a 2023. And I think we should talk to them about an award for, say, Star Trek actor that has appeared on the most podcasts, because I think we know who would win.
The Slutty.
The slut. There you go. The Slutty.
Yeah.
The Slutty. And see, yeah, exactly. I enjoy hearing the stories over and over. There's always a little bit of a nuance every time you tell a story. So
yes, I you have to keep them fresh. You have to keep them fresh for your own delectation, if nobody else's. So yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm also at a certain point, I'm fairly convinced that nothing actually that I say ever really happened, that it's all just manufactured. I think this is one of the interesting things about the human memory, is that we take some kernel of truth, and as the years go by and the years go by and the years go by and the years go by, the thing that we swore happened actually never happened the way it did anyway.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely a thing.
I started telling the story about why Dr. Phlox squawked like a bird so early on in my career that I think there's more of a semblance to reality than many of the other stories I tell.
There's a bird doctor on Star Trek Lower Decks, and I tried to get Mike McMahon, the creator of Lower Decks, to tell me if it was modeled after that story.
Maybe. I didn't know that.
Because Paul F. Tompkins does his voice, and he sounds very much like Phlox. The first time I heard him, I had to look and see who played him, because I thought, is that John? No, it's Paul. I love Paul F. Tompkins, and he sounds suspiciously like you, and I
maybe. I don't know. It'd be interesting to think that, the circle of life is such that eventually there was a bird doctor, in part because I started telling the story at conventions.
Yeah, I need to try and get him to answer me on that one. Lasso. John, there you go.
Celebrity that you've always wanted to meet that you never have. Probably there isn't anybody in the arts necessarily. I think for me, that's more in the political realm. It was a great. I've had the opportunity to meet some people who are sort of political heroes of mine. Obviously, I've never met Obama. That would be terrific. Adam Schiff, my congressman, who I think has been a extraordinarily important and virtuous warrior for truth over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, is a hero of mine. Getting to meet him, mind you, he kind of didn't give me the time of day, because they're used to having like a bajillion people come up and say, I want to shake your hand, so I can't say. Katie Porter is a congresswoman from Orange County. Those of you who are at all political will know her from the whiteboard that she brings into Congress. She uses them to shame executives by kind of writing about, like, here's how much you got paid last year. Here's how much the average consumer makes. Asshole. Love her. People like that. I don't get verklempt very much about celebs because, I'm an actor. I've been an actor my whole life. I really love the work. I respect the work, but I don't necessarily kind of view the people who do the work with as much perhaps adulation as somebody who isn't in the business does. I will say I was on Diagnosis Murder, and I grew up watching Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke. I would love to meet him.
Dick Van Dyke kind of comes like, tap dancing onto the stage, and he's probably 80 at that time, 20 years ago. And that's maybe one of the few times in my career where I've kind of gone like,
supercalifragilistic, yeah.
I don't remember my words. But like I did a movie with Denzel Washington, and it's like you get a little sort of what's the word? It's not intimidated, but you're impressed. You're impressed. And you certainly, have to figure out how to approach somebody with stature in this business, with an odd combination of deference and professionalism, because you do not want to neuter yourself. You do not want
right.
come in to the work and feel like anything you say, sir, anything you want, sir, you have to say, my take on the scene is, I get you, but I do think this guy's point of view is, I on a certain level, almost the bigger the actor, the more important it is that you find a way to bring yourself up oddly in your own estimation to the point where you can have a legit conversation with the person and not feel intimidated.
Well, Lasso wants to meet Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I mean, it is. Yes, Stacey Abrams. Absolutely, I'd love to meet Stacey Abrams.
Yeah, well, she's part of the Star Trek family now. They had her in the last episode of Discovery.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny though. I don't know quite how to put this. In instances where it's not just meeting the person, but where it's getting to spend some quality time with them, that's a whole different world in which it's like, huzzah, I got to meet somebody who I think is really doing amazing stuff, and I deeply respect them, and I can find out some stuff about what they're up to that might be interesting, and I can thank them. But in the course of like just meeting, like, hey, that part of it doesn't really tend to appeal to me because there's no juice.
Right.
Like, getting to meet Adam Schiff was great. I go to these political fundraisers all the time. You can come up afterwards and you can say, hey, thanks. But that's all you get to do. And it doesn't mean much to me. Katie Porter actually came and dropped shit off for the Hollywood Food Coalition. And that was pretty cool because I got to spend some time with Katie Porter and kind of tour her around and tell her about the work we do. And I got to kind of talk to her a little bit. That was meaningful.
It's all about the meaningful interactions.
Yeah. And 9 out of 10 times with quote celebrities, that isn't happening.
Right. One of the podcasts that I do, one of the themes I like to do is Conventions 101 and the best ways to get that quality time with your favorite.
It's a drink.
Yes. If you ever see John in a bar, buy him a drink. That'll work. But I also talk about, find something, interesting to talk about. Maybe something that's not necessarily Star Trek related, because a lot of the Trek actors would love to talk about other things.
I always want to know what you're reading. I mean, I'll say if that's what I'm always interested in. It's like, what are you reading these days?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I've always said is know when to end the conversation, especially if you're at their autograph table. I know you signed for Creation, so you're very limited with your fan interactions.
Yeah. I mean, although I certainly go to other conventions where that's not.
Right, yeah, but I always say, just respect the fact that the actors are there to sign autographs for everybody and to make, it's you're there to work, and just kind of read, and if the line's getting a little long behind you and you've got your autograph and you're just trying, just bring it to a nice end, so that the actor doesn't have to tell you to shoo. You never do. I mean, I know how much you love talking to everybody. You never tell anybody to shoo. When we met, I remember, because we were having this wonderful conversation. I think it's because you were working with Hillary Clinton, and we were just having this wonderful conversation, and they brought you lunch to your signing table, and they said, I just remember this so vividly. I said, I'm going to go. I'm going to let you eat. And you're like, no, stay. You are so wonderful with your fans, and you always have these incredible interactions.
You bought me a house. God's sake, no. I mean, I know there's a gentleman on earlier who's an actor. It's like, this is a hard fucking business. Mm-hmm. The statistics are staggering. 85% of, I don't know if this is an actual statistic, but it was a statistic at one point. I doubt it's changed much. 85% of the actors in our union make under $15,000 a year. So I feel like, I am steeped in a kind of privilege. I mean, obviously you work for it. I spent my life studying, and it's not, I don't mean to say that it just kind of is complete fortuity, but there's still a lot of good fortune that has to befall you if you're going to have a career. So I take my, it's not responsibility. I appreciate the fact that if it weren't for people who gave a fuck and were willing to watch me on television, I don't know what the fuck I would do, because I have no other skill sets. Right. I mean, I doubt I could have hoarded myself out, because I don't think anybody would pay me money to sleep with me. And beyond that, it's like, I don't know, donut maker? I don't know. I don't think I'd be good at that.
Right. Mars is absolutely right. Small conventions are great. But again, unless it's John Billingsley, just kind of read when it's time to move on, because everybody's there to work. And some actors are more than happy to spend time talking to you, but sometimes they just, Because I always say, don't ever make somebody tell you to leave, because that's just going to put a damper on what was possibly an incredible 5-minute conversation. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, all I'll ever say to somebody is like, "Hey, double back around to the end of the line. We'll chat."
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Or
what I usually do is say, "Hey, just mush off to the side."
Mm-hmm.
And if enough people mush off to the side, it becomes sort of like a strange little cyst that's kind of attached to your table, which is
it's surely, if you held court in the bar after hours, you were great. You had about 20 people just sitting there drinking and chatting.
Well, that is actually one of my favorite things to do, is to see how a crowd can metastasize around a minor television celebrity. It always interests me. It's like, wow, okay. I give good bar.
You definitely give good.
My wife always used to screw, like I for some reason, of all the things that could have happened to me, the idea that I would be somebody who would have the good fortune to be able to walk into any bar in the world, and if I just said loudly enough, back when I was on Star Trek, and beer, it's like I'm made for that. It's like that's exactly the kind of temperament I have.
Didn't you say Manhattans just kept showing up at the bar? And you're just like, every time I turn,
that's the problem. Is that as I get older, it's like my ability to take full advantage of the largesse is somewhat limited.
Okay, let's see what Kelly has to say about Scott. London Convention, Usher, and he said to his handler, "These people have paid good money to be here. The least I can do is shake their hand and ask them how they are."
Whereas I feel like the least I can do is give them a big snog and a kiss, and I don't know, maybe invite them home with me to spend an evening of contented. Anyway, that's the least I can do.
Because we bought you your house, so you owe us.
The least I can do. Bonnie doesn't like when those people show up, though, by and large. She draws these arbitrary lines. I don't understand it.
Oh, terrible. Just terrible. I'm so sorry.
Having said that, I should probably go and see how she's doing, because theoretically we were going to have dinner, and it's getting on.
It is. Apologize to Bonnie, but we were having such a great time, and I absolutely appreciate you being here. Don't forget, mark your calendars, January 14th. It was amazing last year. I'm sure it's going to be amazing this year.
We're going to have, I can't yet announce any of the guests, because, it doesn't do much good to invite them too early, because they call us later. But we're going to start doing the invites next week. Last year was amazing because everybody we invited accepted. And
I have a feeling you're probably going to have that kind of luck this year.
Yeah, so we're hoping we'll have some cool headliners, some great panels. We're going to have some interstitial entertainment. That's going to be Bonnie Gordon is going to do some songs for us.
Bonnie Gordon is amazing. Anybody that doesn't know her, she is the voice of the Prodigy computer and the Protostar, and she is one talented human being.
Absolutely, and generous as the days long.
100% agree. So that, mark your calendars. Tech Talks 2, January 14th is going to be probably another 8 hours or so.
Yeah, I think it's going to start at 10.
Get the programming
until 6. That's Pacific Coast time. So I know that's going to be slightly different for those of you who live out in the world, but 8 hours. That's the hope. And our goal, last year we made 80 grand. This year we're shooting for 100 grand.
All right. Well, everybody is so thankful that you're here. I'm not going to go to individual goodbyes, because don't want Bonnie to come knocking on your door telling us how hungry she is. But thank you all for being here. Thank you especially to John. And you know what, guys? I will see you all next week. And until then, live long and prosper.
Hey, this is Connor Turner. You've been listening to the NX7062 podcast with Stephanie. Enjoy your evening.